Most agency owners think that their sales rep failed because they hired the wrong person, but that is almost never the case. Sales reps fail when you hire them before 4 specific systems are in place. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly what those 4 systems are so you can tell whether hiring a sales rep is going to actually work in your agency or whether it is doomed to fail. The real problem you have right now is that sales outcomes depend entirely on you. Right? All sales knowledge about the business, about what you sell, how you sell it, the pricing exists exclusively in your memory. Any pre-call communication and follow-up actions are not defined or standardized. Sometimes you might do them, sometimes you might not. Sometimes you might email people, sometimes you might phone them. There's just no system in place there. And sales performance and call quality cannot be reviewed or evaluated without actually being on the calls. If you're running ads right now, you can't tell if the lead quality is getting better or worse without you being on the calls themselves, which is an issue, right? And the reason why hiring can't fix this is because personal judgment can't be just magically transferred to a new hire. Tasks cannot be delegated if they're not already documented, and salespeople require defined processes to perform consistently. It's obvious if there's no system in place, you can't just expect someone to come in and magically start closing deals unless they are a creme de la creme top 1% closer. And if they are, then they would be better served if you had these systems in place anyway. They would be more successful and more quickly. Adding a salesperson to the mix here when you don't have these systems in place makes what is already very inconsistent even more inconsistent, right? And that is an issue. The reason why this pattern is so clear to me is because I've built and documented the entire sales process in 2 7-figure agencies where I worked as a sales manager, and I was directly involved in hiring 10 sales reps, or maybe more. I made a lot of mistakes early on with this process. The sales hires that worked only worked once there was a documented sales process in place that had been built. You need to understand, sales delegation requires systems that need to be in place before it can work consistently, right? Hiring someone before those systems exists leads to what I consider to be very predictable failure. I can see if it's going to fail beforehand if those systems are missing. And having them in place, actually building them out, will materially increase the chance of success of successfully hiring, onboarding, training, and having someone take over your sales process indefinitely, right? And I'm going to walk through each one of those systems right now so you can assess readiness, and I'm going to give you a checklist as well at the end of the video that you can go through to make sure that, everything's in place correctly. The first system is documenting the sales process, right? All sales steps from the moment someone books in the calendar or however they come through in it as a lead, through like a lead magnet, whether it's a call booking in, straight into the calendar, whether it's both, all the way to, after the call, if they've been closed, what their onboarding steps are for that person. If they don't close, what the follow-up steps are, the pipeline stages, how we reactivate leads that have been cold for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, etc. The calls themselves, whether that's calling someone before a call, the actual sales call itself, follow-up calls, follow-up emails, everything needs to have a defined sequence of actions and scripts. The sales outcomes must not depend on who conducts the call. Obviously, there's always going to be variance between people, but the point is that you could take any person who is relatively good at sales, put them in the seat, and they'll be able to operate it pretty much instantly. System number 2 is installing the sales infrastructure. The CRM, if you even have a CRM, you need one if you don't, must clearly show every single stage of the sales process. Must be very clear where all the leads are, kind of in terms of the sales pipeline process, right? Each pipeline stage must have a clear meaning and purpose. This is pipelines for people who haven't had a call yet, but they look like a good lead. This pipeline's for people who we've had a call and now they've booked in for a follow-up call. This pipeline is for people who we had a call, they were a great lead, but for whatever reason they didn't start now, but they probably will start in a month or 2, and I should follow up with them. Follow-up tasks must be visible inside the CRM, not just tracked manually, right? There needs to be processes in place for if you speak to somebody and they seem like an awesome lead that we want to close, but now's not the right time, which is sometimes is. Then we want to be able to follow up with them and make sure that there's the processes in place for setting reminders, how to set them, when to set them for, what to do when they trigger. And, the salesperson themselves must be trained on how to do all of that inside the CRM and how to operate the system, right? System number 3 is defining the sales role. We've got the infrastructure in place, we've got the process mapped out, but now we need to think, okay, who do we want to hire? What skills do they need? What character traits do we want them to have? How good of a cultural fit do they need to be? It must be clear which parts of the sales process the person actually handles. The success in the role must be clearly defined and tied into compensation and progression. They need to know what they stand to gain from it, how much money they're going to make now, how much money they're going to make in 6 months, how much money they'll make in 2 years, etc. There needs to be like a clear progression for them, as there should be, right? And also there must be a clear process for evaluating, and ranking sales candidates before you hire. Like I said at the start, then you need to know what you're even looking for. And there's a few different things that I could walk you through at some point. Maybe I'll make another video about it, about how to rank sales candidates. And also good sales candidates, once you're actually interviewing them, they need to be followed up with and progressed just like sales leads. You can't leave people just wondering what the hell's going on. They will end up joining another business, right? Just like your leads. The leads will end up working with another agency. Your sales, prospects will end up joining another sales team. They need to be follow up with and kept warm religiously. And the reason why this is important is because you're only going to hire one person in the beginning, most likely, but you may have 2 or 3 people who will be a great fit and would be a great fit later down the line when you need to hire another sales rep, and we don't want to burn bridges with them because good salespeople are hard to come by. The 4th system, loving this, the 4th system, build a repeatable onboarding process, right? Once we've hired someone and we've got someone in the role and it's time for them to get stuck in, you need to have onboarding steps that are predefined and reused for every single hire, so you're not spending all your time and energy doing all of this every single time you hire a sales rep, right? All the content about your agency, what you sell, how you sell it, who you sell it to, what their objections are, all the things that you think that would be relevant to improve someone's chance of success need to be documented and then shared with that person. Sales call recordings, 20, 30 sales call recordings that are golden examples of how to sell and what you sell and the kind of prospect that people are going to run into need to be documented and sent to them, and actually, tell them, hey, listen to this, right? And the performance standards you have must be clearly explained during the hiring, but also during onboarding as well, making it very clear, what comes now, what the next 2 weeks, 4 weeks look like. And most importantly, failure criteria must be clearly defined as well. So underperformance leads to replacement. You don't want to hold on to the wrong rep for too long, right? Usually, I would say 20 sales calls is a reasonable amount of volume for someone to take and to be assessed for how good they are. And during those 20 sales calls, you want them to be at least 50% of what the KPI close rate is. So if you're aiming for a 30% close rate, they take 20 calls and they close over 15% of them. That's acceptable. Anything less, I would fire them. The best people will close at KPI or higher. So maybe you even want to fire someone if they're at like 60% of the KPI. What happens when you skip the sales systems is that the performance of your sales as a whole in your entire business continues to depend on an individual, aka you, and not a process, right? You would be better off with a process, right? Even if you don't hire a sales rep. Follow-up and deal progress relies purely on memory instead of systems, which means deals slip through the cracks, which means you spend more money to acquire customers because you're not getting the most out of all your leads and you're not making more absolute amount of revenue as well. Or profit, right? Because you're spending, like if your CAC's going up, that's eating into your profit. Salespeople are hired, if you do hire, into unclear roles where performance expectations do not meet reality, which just causes friction and causes them to leave or be unsuccessful. And underperforming hires stay too long before being fired, and then you think that sales reps suck or that it's not going to work for you, and then you don't hire anybody, and then you keep spending time on sales when you should be focused on other stuff. What you must come to terms with is waiting to hire can feel like falling behind, and system building produces no immediate relief. It's the kind of thing that's like boring and feels like pointless, but is important. And you must come to terms with the fact that progress is happening, even though nothing is visibly changing at the time. And that this correct sequence is going to feel slower than the other path, but the other path is the wrong path. So better to do it slowly than to do it wrong. And if you get it right, you're going to have a reliable salesperson who handles all day-to-day sales activities. You're no longer going to have to spend time running sales calls or doing follow-ups. The sales role itself is going to be documented so future hires can be made even faster, and the agency can grow without sales depending on you anymore because you can focus on the things in the business that only you can do, while the sales rep closes loads of deals even better than you can because you're not a sales rep, you're a business owner, right? This is normal. Anyway, final thing, so the hiring readiness checklist, like I said, If sales calls can be run using written steps without your involvement, tick. If deals can move forward and follow-up happens without relying on memory, tick. If the sales role itself is clearly defined with agreed performance standards and progression, tick. If new hires can be trained and evaluated using the same process every time, tick. There's your readiness checklist. You can just take this away right now, make sure all these boxes are ticks, and your next sales hire will be way more likely to be successful. So what happens now? Like I said, you could go do that. And if you would like my help with any of this, with building the systems, documenting the process, hiring the person, training the person, onboarding the person, building the whole system out, working directly with you, mapping it all out, making sure you don't have to do any of it, then you can book a call with me and we can have a conversation. Just to be clear though, this is for agency owners that sell B2B, ideally doing over 50K a month of revenue. More like 100K is probably perfect, maybe 150. That's usually when you cap out as the founder. So if that is you and you want help with this, book a call now and we'll take it from there. See you next time.